to speak to the woman of Sisterhood. And these two women have truly built and founded a ministry based on just that. And I found it a no-brainer that they would be the ones to speak for it, but not because of their public accolades, but because I know just a little bit of the testimony, and I don't want anybody up here that hasn't lived what they're talking about. And so one of them, which is a very near and dear friend, funny short story, I moved up here to the DMV from Georgia 2016. Jesus. I've been here a long time. And I moved to DC proper 2017. And my first job, I was like, okay, this is going to be my big girl job. Like, I'm moving to DC. And this young lady, she was on my interview panel. And she was the only Black face in the room. And we just had this immediate connection. And she was one of the reasons that I got hired to my first job here in DC. And so, again, when God pushes you and he plants you strategically, he already has the people in the room that will help you get to that next space. And she brought her BFF with her that I just met today, and I love her so much already. So I can't wait for us to get deeper in our relationship. But I want y'all to give a warm welcome to the creators of the Rooted Life, Miss Morgan and Miss Dorian. Please come on and join us.
Can you pass me my phone, please? Thank you.
So, y'all, they have a podcast called The Rooted Life. And listen, if you want to get your life rooted, go ahead. Where can they find y'all? Everywhere podcasts are?
Yeah.
All right.
Podcasts are. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the places. You can go find all those eight.
And so to have them as a guest on my podcast, it is an honor. It is y'all, they got
sitting in this seat.
They got Bible plans on YouVersion. They out here, y'all. So go and listen, because the women of God have so much to say. So thank you both for being a part of this. Thank you all for your testimony. Thank you all for just living the life, right? And, I'm sure when you all became best friends, you didn't quite understand where the Lord was actually going to take you. But I just really thank you all for exuding sisterhood, because we know we live in this space, and not just in the church, but where the mean girl, like, that's the thing. I'm a mean girl, and we know in the kingdom, the Lord is really calling for unity. He's calling for oneness. And so I just want to kick it off by just share with us, like, how you all became sisters, how you all became best friends, and, like, what was the glue that kept you all here?
Yeah, I'll share. So Morgan and I have been friends since we were like 18. We're in our 30s now. So it's been like such a cool journey to see how many iterations of Doe and Mo there have been. But the thing that I think stands out about our friendship is that we always stayed connected. Like, even when we were not physically present in the same place, there was always kind of this like, how you doing? What's going on? I remember early on, before we were like as close as we are now, we would literally just call each other. And I would know if she was calling, I need like 3 hours, because it's going to be that kind of catch up where it's like, okay, we got to talk about relationships. How your family doing? What's going on with school and your job? So I'm like, okay, I know what kind of time it's going to be. But I think there was always a desire to make sure that the other person is good. Even if I'm not seeing you every day, if I'm not talking to you every day, when we do connect, I really want to make sure that you're in a good place.
Mm-hmm. I think you covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just have so much respect for her. I always have. Yeah, I don't know if I tell you that. I just admire you so much. I just have so much. Not you crying on the stage.
Aren't they the cutest?
I just have always respected her. And I don't know if that's brought us together. I'm sure God and his goodness. But I've always genuinely enjoyed being with her. Like, her parents live over by Cascade. We would get some cookies or brownies and watch like Def Jam poetry. Like, we were just always kindred. There's always something that felt familiar about us. And you want to tell them how we became friends? Because I think that is a good story. That is interesting. Actually, yes. So my parents went to high school with her aunt and uncle. And so when we were talking earlier about like a lineage of promises, like there was connection before we even knew this would be birthed. And so I think that's one of the special things our parents had. My parents, her aunt, uncle, had a 20-year high school reunion. Her cousin was there. He was cute. I was choosing. And so we ended up exchanging numbers. I'm in like the 8th grade. And so I was like hanging out with their family. He's like, oh, you should meet my cousin Morgan. Like, I think y'all would be friends. And we still never did connect. This is like back in the days of Facebook. Maybe we were like Facebook friends, but I ran into her at a party on the like front step. And then I'm like, you're Will's cousin. It's like, yeah, you're the girl. And so then from there, it just really took off. So yeah, it was cool to see that there was a through line even before we knew it.
Yeah. That's just like how we were talking about last night, the breadcrumbs. Like he'll put you right in the vicinity of where he wants you to be. But, just like, the children of Israel, what should have took 11 days took 40, right? 40 years, but still they got to their promise. And I love that. So I have a question that actually we're going to start and then we're going to make our way back to sisterhood, because I think a lot of times we see friendships, we see, platonic relationships, we see romantic relationships through lenses of how we see God through the perspective of relationships that we've had platonically and or relationally. And so I want you all to talk to us about why is it important to our earthly relationships that we see God correctly? Like, how does our perspective of God help us see our relationships in the right lenses? Is that clear? Was that clear, y'all? Okay.
There's a theologian, I can't think of his name, but essentially he says, what you believe about God is the most important thing about yourself. What I think about God is the most important thing about my identity. And if I can see him clearly, then I can see me clearly. But I think the problem is so many of us are dealing with wounds and trauma and pain from the past that it clouds our vision of who he is, even church hurt. I think that's why it's so important to let him reveal himself through his word. But who I believe him to be is the most important thing because it's going to dictate my identity, how I deal with offense, how I navigate relationships, how I deal with my purpose, my obedience. Like everything stems from if I believe that he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, then my life should look like it. But I just think that is the most important thing about me and the most important thing any of us can consider. Yeah. What do you want?
I think what I would add is if you believe that God designed relationships for us to flourish in them, and if we believe that they are meant to be a reflection of him, then when we do deal with trauma and with offense, then that allows us to kind of turn the corner back toward forgiveness, back toward reconciliation. If we see God as a God who forgives us, who extends mercy and grace to us, who extends kindness and compassion to us when we get it wrong every day, all the time, then when someone does us that way, whether it's a close friend, a sister, whatever the relationship is, then that can flow through us back to them. And you started off the conversation talking about it's about unity at the end of the day. Like God loves unity. He wants to protect that. And so anytime we see anything trying to tear any relationships apart, it's something to look at and to really have to go in to examine to see what do we need to do to bring this back right.
I love that. That's so good. And I think it's so spot on that we have to see God and know him first. I think it was Elder Brittany last night where she said, like, be still and know God, right? So like when we know God, then we are able to see everything else in a clearer view.
Can I add something? It's so funny she said that. That's been my scripture. He's had my therapist about it, my mama, like my pastor. I said, okay, I get it. But it's funny because my mom and I were on the phone, and the word acknowledge is actually the Greek word yada. That means to know. One definition says to find and discern, that there is a searching that has to happen to know him, to perceive him. And so I just think I just love that she said to know him. There's a process in which it takes to the word yada, to acknowledge, to discern, to find out, to perceive and discern who he really is that's on us, so just.
And in that learning how to seek the Father also gives us the patience and endurance that we need to seek our sisters, that we need to learn and understand this is a very complex, wonderfully, beautifully made human being that just on sight, I'm not going to understand her right away, or I'm not going to understand them right away. So if I had the endurance enough to learn the most vast being, and that is our Heavenly Father, then I must have the patience enough to be okay that if we hit a tiff or we have a agree to disagree, then I'm going to have the patience to wait it out, and let's understand and let's be able to see each other eye and eye. So I think that's really, really, really good. And so we talked about like it being a part of our, sometimes we see our relationships through trauma or like broken friendships or broken relationships. And so I know you all have your own personal testimony about some trying times in your friendship. And so I want you to talk to us about like, how did your personal healing help you heal in your sisterhood relationship? And why was it important for you to heal personally in order for this to get right?
So what happened, I think the impetus of what happened is Dorian got a man and I got jealous. I think that's just, I'm not about to sugarcoat nothing. She got a man and I just had this idea that like, all right, we've been traveling through life. God gonna give her a man, and then we're gonna get married, and it's a lot of we. And now I'm like, y'all and me, like, what about it's me and you? So any problem I really had with her was a problem I needed to bring up with Jesus. And I think that's with every relationship, that any problem that I see, most times it's a mirror that he's like, there's a speck in your eye. And I think that's something I'm learning in my relationships is like, let me go to him first and be like, is it a me thing, a her thing, a us thing? And so I think part of the issue is that I was jealous of her, but deeper than that, I thought that God had left me out. I thought he had forgotten. I'm like, I'm faithful too. Like, send me somebody. And so my issue was not with her. My issue was not with God blessing her. My issue was that I didn't have a clear understanding of who he was as my father, that he would never leave me out, that he delights in me, that he's never not kept his eye or his hand on me. So my issue was never really with her. It just manifested as that. But my issue is that I did not see him clearly or trust him to be who he says he is to me. And if I trust that he can take care of me, then I don't have to be jealous. I can rejoice and be by her side on her wedding day and say, thank you, God, for sending her a man of God. But my issue wasn't with her. But we didn't have enough relational tools to be able to, that took years. What's your perspective?
Well, I think too, like as the friend who was unsure, I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Like why do we have this beef? And then I'm also, when you talk about like healing personally, I'm going before the Lord to be like, okay, help me understand how to walk alongside my friend. Like, give me the grace and the compassion to continue to know that it actually isn't about me. And so I don't have to take it personally. Like, the offense is not mine to even have. And so I think that was, my journey looked more like taking the time to walk with him, to ask, what is it that I need to provide? Like, how can I serve her as a friend in this season? And I think what's so beautiful about, like, once we got over our hump and we did our healing and we reconciled, I got married in March this year. And I remember, it was a beautiful day. But it was a beautiful day and I'm so grateful for it. But what I remember the most about that day, when people ask me about it, I'm like, my best friend served me so well. And to know that what we had to go through to get to that point, it was just so special to see how you showed up for me that day. And to know, like, reconciliation is real. Like, God can sew it back together if you let him, if you open your hands, if you let your heart be open to being restored.
That was so. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Because we're just gonna keep it up here. It's all right. It'll be our centerpiece today. Wow. Reconciliation is possible.
Can I just add something?
Please.
That it wasn't linear. I think sometimes with reconciliation, it looks like you think they're going to say they're sorry. I say I'm sorry. And it's like, we had so many calls. We would just be sitting on FaceTime just looking at each other. I'm like, I don't really know what to say to you.
Supposed to be figuring it out.
Yeah,
we staring at
each other.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it wasn't linear. And I think that we want it to look the way we think it has to look. But I think because we are willing to keep surrendering and submitting it to God, we kept them like, we've reached our end. Take it, God. And he would be like, all right, do this. We reached our end. So it was this iterative, like, cycle. It wasn't very smooth. And there was like one conversation we had in person. I was like, this is my last time trying to make it work. I think we both were like, this is the last time. We went and got tacos. I couldn't eat nothing. My stomach, she ate.
Always
She
go.
tore up some tacos.
Always go outside.
My stomach was in knots. And I was like, God, this is my last time trying to make this thing work. But it wasn't, I think people can look and like, well, it was over a year.
Yeah.
And we weren't really talking. Like,
Yeah.
it was actually, yeah, it was a beef.
Yeah.
Officially.
I think what just came to me too, though, is that it is real and it is not linear, and it also requires humility. Like, it requires you saying, you know what, I could be big and bad with my pride and say, like, you know what, I'm waiting on her to apologize. I'm not calling her. I'm not saying it. But if you would put that down, because if what you really want at the end of the day is relationship, one of my favorite pastors says, do you want to be right or do you want to be in relationship? And it's not always about being right. It's not always about getting what it is that you think you need in that moment. Sometimes it's about, okay, you know what? Let me humble myself. Let me try to see it from their perspective. Let me go to God to say, reveal something new to me about this. What am I missing here? And we kept being willing to do that. And it took a while, but we got there. We got there.
And that word willing, there it is again, because that's a choice. That's a choice to, again, like you said, lay down your right to be right and say, I might have missed the mark on this one. And thank you for loving me through me missing that mark, right? That is a true heart posture that, again, back to the perspective of the Lord, it's like, God, I didn't get it right. I missed the mark. And every time he welcomes us with open arms. And so he's like, back to the perspective, when you see me in that light, then it also gives you the hope that you'll be able to do the same thing with your peers. And I truly love that. And I'm grateful to God that you all were able to reconcile, because now you have a whole ministry birthed from that very thing. And that's just like God. Again, he'll say, no, there are seasons where he calls us to walk away because seasons have ended and they're up. But then there are seasons that he gives us the grace to weather the storm. And your grace is evident now, because it's like, not only did we weather the storm, but this is how we did it. And we're giving hope to those that want to just throw their hands up and be like, oh, well, she didn't get it right, so I'm out of here. But the other lesson and the greater lesson is the Lord's desire for us to remain humble. The pride goes before the fall, right? We can quote all the scriptures about pride and how that truly separates us from God. And so it's amazing that he's used relationships to teach us one of the most valuable lessons in his eyes, and that's to remain humble in heart. So thank you all for sharing that. And so I want you to talk to, maybe there's a woman listening or in the room that's like, okay, that reconciliation, that's nice, but that wasn't my story. There was a time or a person or a relationship that the Lord, or not, maybe not even the Lord, just time, just seasons changed. And it was a time for them to depart from one another. Maybe it was a tumultuous breakup. Maybe it was a peaceful breakup, but it was a breakup nonetheless. Talk to us first about what do they need to do to prepare? Because we know when God allows something to leave, he sends something back to fill its place, right? So talk to us about, like, what would one do to walk through that healing, to even be open for new relationships?
I was talking to my pastor last weekend, and, I was talking to her, like, I'm discerning what's next. And she told me to pray something I hadn't considered. She said, ask God, what am I missing here? And I was like, oh, she's like, ask him what you're missing here. And I was like, I didn't consider that. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm like, regardless of the reason why the relationship ended, it ended. But part of it is, I want to know, what am I missing about me? Like, he was showing me something, and it's easy, like, well, they could have done that. And it's like, but God, surely this is a revelation for me as well, or opportunity for revelation. So my first step would be like, Lord, help me see what I'm missing about myself in the situation. Help me see, was there an area that I could have shown up differently? Help me see if there's an area where I was being prideful or selfish. Like, help me get clear about me. What did David say? Search my heart. And that's a dangerous prayer. So don't pray it if you're not really trying to get your feelings hurt by the Holy Spirit. I'm just want to give this. There should be disclaimers on certain chapters in the Bible. be careful if you're going to pray this.
Beware.
But like, show me myself clearly in that relationship and then help me heal through that. And that might look like therapy. That might look like a life coach. That might look like community. But I think getting clear about how we're showing up in relationships help us partner with the Holy Spirit on how he wants us to show up. And I think one more thing I wanted to add when you talked about God moving through relationship, I think something I noticed that we haven't really talked about is there was a lot of warfare that I was facing in that season because of sin, honestly, and because there was something that was coming next that I was just facing. And I could feel, it wasn't just I was just offended with her. I was feeling angry. Like I was feeling additional emotions that I'm like, I don't think this is just us beefing, actually. I think this is actually the enemy coming against, like, we closed our business down. Like, we ended our business and our ministry because we didn't want to be fake on the stage talking about a friendship that didn't exist. Like, we were looking on Instagram, we look back at our content, I'm like, we look so miserable together. But it was serious warfare, so I wanted to add that part. But I think the first step would just to be get clarity from God about how you did show up and ask him for healing and revelation about his desire for how you can show up moving forward.
Yeah, I would just add about like to truly pray about forgiveness. Like, I think in order to be ready to receive something else, your hand has to be open.
Okay.
So if you're holding tight onto the frustration, the pain, and all of the offense that you feel from the last thing, it's really hard to even receive the next thing. I mean, I have a specific friendship that came to mind when you mentioned that. And we stopped being friends like several years ago. And it took me a long time for when people would bring her name up to not like feel something. You know, you feel your body get a little tight. It's kind of like you roll your eyes. And I'm like, okay, Lord, what is that? Like, help me to actually release this in order to be able to receive what you have next. I think another piece of it is the perspective and thinking that like nothing else can replace it. And that's a scarcity mindset. Like, and it's not to say that it wasn't beautiful, that it wasn't fulfilling, but God can refill whatever gap it left. And so being willing to see what he is able to do, being expectant about that, and redirecting some of that toward that expectancy, that hope for what he can do. I think that mindset shift is helpful as well.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing? I had a friend who had to move a couple years ago, and she had a beautiful rose bush in the front of her house, and she was so sad because she was like, I took care of this rose bush for years. And the therapist said, well, did it serve its purpose? Then you got to let it go. It's okay. Yeah, that rose bush was beautiful. It is such with a friendship. You've cultivated, you toiled over it, you looked at it, you marveled, you enjoyed it. And then sometimes with Ecclesiastes 3:1, there's a time and place. And so I think also with, you know, what you said, I think also grieving the loss, but also celebrating the purpose that it served in your life. Even if it was a purpose to be like, wait, this ain't what God has for me. But I think there is still a purpose there. So I think I would add to what you're saying. Grieve. It's sad. I don't like friendships ending. I don't like relationships ending. It's sad, but I can also say, God, show me the purpose there. Show me that there was still beauty there. So when I think about it, I can still have gratitude in my heart that you allowed me and that person to have a relationship for whatever season that was in my life.
I would add to that too. Like when you're holding on to something, I would challenge you to pray for that person. It's real hard to pray for somebody when you got anger stored up in your heart. To genuinely pray for their life, for them to be blessed, for them to go on and have flourishing relationships, for God to do great things in their life. I challenged myself to do that even with the friend that I'm thinking of. And that shifted my perspective because I had to remember she's still God's daughter. That's still one of his kids. So it's still my sibling. I can't be talking trash about my own sibling. We may not be close anymore. We may not have that same relationship, but that's still his child. And so reframing even how you see the person instead of villainizing them, allowing them to be a human that you can still pray over and push on into their next as you go on into yours.
That was good.
That's my best friend.
That's good.
That's my best friend.
Yeah. No, both of y'all eat on that. That's so, because you answered the question to the T, right? What do we do for our personal healing, but also how do we release it for what's next? Because there's always going to be a next, especially if the Lord is calling you to release it. That means he got to make that vacancy open so he can pour in wherever else you're wherever you're going. So I want to ask this last question, and then I want you all to get into the next piece. So what would you tell to someone who has done the healing, or they're in the healing process, right? Because healing is continual. They're in the healing process from their previous friendship, And now the Lord has brought them to new friendships and relationships, but some of the same traumas or triggers are showing up. How do they navigate with their new friends to say, I still need help? Because there's a level of vulnerability that breakups, right? Like it leaves an open wound, but then the Lord will send whoever's next to help heal those things. But how should they navigate in those new relationships to help their healing journey so that they can be in a new and healthy friendship or sisterhood?
One thing I think is about being honest with yourself. And so it's about knowing where you are, what it is that you're capable of giving, and what it is that you need in a relationship. So the common denominator in all the relationships is you. So if you're starting to see the same things over and over, I think sometimes we do have to be honest with ourselves and say, now, wait a minute, what's going on with me? But when you get to a new space, I think it's also about just communicating. And we throw communicate around like it's like this real, just communicate. It's actually really hard. It's hard to say exactly.
Effectively, absolutely.
When you did this thing, that actually made me feel this way. When you said this, that hurt my feelings. And I might have snapped at you because it hurt my feelings. And so I want to acknowledge that I came at you this way and that what you said hurt me. Sometimes you have to voice it for people because they won't know. And just giving them an attitude or a K in a text message, it doesn't say anything. You haven't actually addressed anything. So I think challenging ourselves in relationships to kind of just voice over what it is that we're experiencing when we do feel that tension. I remember with one of my friends at work, there was something that happened. She was late to work and I was also her manager. So it's a weird dynamic, friends and manager, but she was late to work and I kind of like snapped at her a little bit. And I remember coming back to her and saying like, hey, I'm sorry for the way that I came to you. Like that wasn't cool. And later on, she was like, hey, I just want you to know you're a great friend and a good manager. From being able to just acknowledge that you did something and apologize for it, like that goes so far, I think, in relationships. And we don't always realize that. And I'm sorry can really do a lot in a relationship.
That's good. I mean, we've already talked about prayer. That feels like that. I don't know if it's obvious to anybody, but that always is my first go to Jesus. And I go to my therapist every week, every Friday.
Jesus and therapy. Christy help, but she would love to hear that. Jesus and therapy.
I go to Ronnie on Fridays. So I think bringing it to God, but I think also, I think something I'm learning in my church, in my new church home, is to allow people to love you and let you in, like let them in. And because I was navigating a lot of church hurt, it was hard. I'm like, I don't know if I really trust these people. I don't, but there is a way. I don't know. There's something God did in my heart where He was just like opening me up to receive that love. Because sometimes we can be so like, no, don't come close to me. But it's like very slowly in His kindness, He's like, let them in. That takes discernment and prayer, wisdom but it was almost like the slow, like unraveling of like this beautiful flower. And so I'd say really pray about asking God to help you receive the love that He's offering through His love, His Son, but also through relationships that He wants to show His love. But I think because of hurt, we can kind of close off and say, no, I'm not going to let anyone in. But we don't, I think my friend's therapist is like, essentially when your heart is like that, you've created a fence. Not only can people not get in, but you can't get out. And we don't want to live lives like that. And so we don't want that hurt to create a fence around our heart where we can't, there has to be wisdom. My therapist uses it as like, it's a veil. You don't want like a knight in shining armor where your face is covered and no one can see you. But there should be a little bit of some healthy boundaries. So I think also just praying for God to help you have those healthy boundaries, but accept the love that He's offering you through relationships and friendships.
Y'all give them some love. Give them a hand. Man, just again, these are the things that are on God's heart pertaining His daughters, because He sees the struggles of connection. He sees the struggles of like comparison and the things that try to show up that will keep us isolated, that will keep us away from the community and the people that He sent to love on us, right? And so I want us to shift a bit. They're going to do an actual activity because the Lord was very clear that we are not just talking about it, but we are activating what He's done in this space, and He's healing some hearts. And so I'm going to get out you all's way. You all go forward. But ladies, as this particular portion of the session goes on, really be open to hear what God has to say, and also be open to those that are around you, because you never know. And my good sister friend has coined this: what you need is in the room. So please be open to where it is that God is taking you in this particular space, and don't just leave it in here, but take it where you go. So, all right.